by that edge, so I'm good.
I'm going by the clock here, so I'll wait till it ticks over. See a lot of 10s. 10 o'clock on 10:10.
So Jeremy Linder.
10 o'clock. I will call a meeting of the Clatsop County Planning Commission for Tuesday, October 10th, 2023 to order. I'd like to rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we may have the roll call, please.
Christopher Farr.
Present.
Clark Powers.
Present.
Mike Magar.
Present.
Katie Pritchard.
Present.
Jeremy Linner is excused. Terry Johnson.
I'm here.
And Jason Crashard.
Here.
Okay, I'll ask if there's any members of the commission that want to amend the agenda in any way or accept as is. Somebody wants to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
I'll move we adopt agenda as presented. I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed, nay? And I think it passed unanimously, so we'll move on to business from the public. I don't see any public in the room this morning, and I'm not sure whether staff has received any. Okay, probably not, but I'll just make the announcement. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a brief presentation about any land use planning issue or county concern that is not on the agenda this morning. And we have no one from the public this morning, so we'll move on to two public hearings. These are similar in their mission, and they are going to be held as quasi-judicial proceedings because they are limited to a few parcels of land in the county and don't apply countywide. So, item 2 on our agenda is for a Goal 11 exception for the Cannon Beach Rural Fire Protection District from the Arch Cape Fire Hall relative to their inclusion in the Arch Cape Sanitation District. So if we could, I'll open the public hearing then and ask if any commissioner has an ex parte contact to proclaim at this point. Either member on the virtual membership, just raise your hand if you do. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report? Likewise, there's none to report. So we'll ask if there's any objection to jurisdiction of this body to hear this matter at this time. And I see no one present raising any concern, so I'll ask for the staff report on agenda item 2.
Thank you, Chair Farrar. This is Julia Decker, Planning Manager, Community Development, and this basically is a housekeeping matter. This is an exception request to Goal 11, and amendments to the Southwest Coastal Community Plan as necessary, the County Comprehensive Plan, and any maps that might be attached for property known as 41019 BC, tax lot 4000, also known as 79729 Highway 101, and that is Arch Cape, and to take that 2.03 acre property, an exception to it, and into the Arch Cape Sanitary District's boundary, understanding that this has actually been partially done. It was administratively done, but we did not go through the goal exception process all the way. So this is to complete that. Back in 2007, we had a hearings officer's Type 2A approval for a partition in the F80 zone, which is what this 2.03 acre parcel is, a partition away from Stimson property, which was virtually donated. I think they sold it for a couple of $1,000s to the fire district, which basically covered the costs of recording and things like that. And so we have this 2.03 acre property. It is in the F80 zone. It bounds Castle Rock Estates to the south, and shares a boundary line with that, and it's right on Highway 101. And what the fire district was attempting to do was move the fire hall up out of several hazard areas. The old fire hall, was down on East Beach Road, which is on the south end of Arch Cape, and it was in a tsunami inundation area, and it was in an area where there was a lot of high water. It wasn't actually in a flood zone. I believe there were compressible soils, but it was not in a good area. So this area where the fire hall is now, where they wanted to move it to and where it is located now, is out of the geologic hazard area. It's out of the tsunami inundation area. It is not located in the flood zone. And that was the whole idea, to move this critical facility out of an area where it would not be useful. So that was the idea. And staff at the time, and the hearings officer, among the things that they were considering at the time was, oh, well, we can do a really small 2-acre parcel, which is, when you're doing this kind of a division for a Type 2A of the F80, you want to have a really, really small parcel, the smallest possible. And everybody just thought at the time, and I was present in the room, I didn't participate, but everybody at the time said, oh, well, we can hook it up into the sanitary district and that will keep it smaller because we won't need the space for a septic system. And it just, this set of assumptions just sort of rolled. And anyway, we're doing the cleanup now to take care of it. Let's see. Honestly, there's really not a lot to tell you about. The sections of code that apply, of course, are from the Law Duck Type 4 procedure, public deliberations and hearings, the F80 zone. We did use Oregon Administrative Rule 660-11-0060, which is the exception to Goal 11. One of the things that staff did do, and this has been going on now for some months, was check with the Department of Land Conservation and Development staff about procedures for this, because it's a little off kilter. I mean, we're doing it after the fact, and we didn't have all of the information that we probably should have for a goal exception 11. So this is a little bit of an exercise. Some of it is, we don't have all the information we probably would have if we had taken the goal exception at the time. We probably could have obtained some hazard and health hazard documentation, maybe from DEQ and others. We do have wetlands, apparently, on the site. We have Austin Creek through the southwest corner of it. Staff has been down there often enough to know that the part of the site that is down along the highway is wet. It is not mapped, but you drive by there on any given day and it's damp. So not all of that site is useful. So we probably could have, if we had done the work necessary at the time, gotten the information that we needed to be able to say that, we are alleviating a health hazard. but we didn't have that, and I cannot recreate something that didn't exist. But we did consult with the LCD staff, and they determined that because we are not converting the parcel's comprehensive plan designation, it's not necessary. We confirmed that we don't need a Goal 4 exception, and we don't need a Goal 2 exception, and we don't need a Goal 14 exception. It's going to stay exactly as is. We are not requiring anything that would, nothing in this will increase pressure on surrounding lands. So we're just in the fix what we have and move on. Let's see. Really, there's really not a lot to say here. I guess maybe I would ask you if you have questions for me. Staff is requesting that you recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that they go ahead and take the Goal 11 exception, and we do have an ordinance number for it, which is 23-09. If you were to look in Exhibit 1 on about page 20 and 21 of your packet, you'll see in red the policy H, which would add this to the waste disposal policies. But frankly, that's really about it. Staff is happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you for that report. It was also very well written in the packet. Do any commissioners have a question? This isn't the discussion period, but just a question about the presentation or material in the packet. Appears not. So with that, I'll open the public testimony part of the hearing, and there aren't any members of the public, but I'll just say that if there were, or if somebody is hiding in the shadows that I cannot see, this is a time to make your opinion known, and to, if failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford a decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue, precludes appeal to the board based on that issue. All speakers from the floor are reminded to sign in, state their name and address before speaking, and if you're appearing for as a representative of some agency, to identify, and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. With no one requesting permission to give testimony this morning from the public, we can skip over a few steps here, and there'll be no staff response since there were no comments, and we'll just open it up to Plan Commission discussion if there is any pertaining to this matter. And I'm not seeing or hearing much.
Is the recommended motion on page 14, is that what you're looking for item number 2?
Page 14 of the packet, correct?
That would...
That's it. So, would you like to make that motion?
I will make the motion. I move that the Clatsop County Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Clatsop County Commissioners to amend the text of the comprehensive plan to expand the Arch Cape Sanitary District to include Township 4N, Range 10W, Section 19BC, Tax Lot 04000, and update any maps within the county's comprehensive plan that depict the sanitary district boundaries accordingly.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded to have the County Planning Commission recommend to the County Board of Commissioners to amend the text of the comprehensive plan to expand the Arch Cape Sanitary District to include Township 4 North, Range 10 West, Section 19BC, Tax Lot 04000, and update any maps within the county's comprehensive plan that depict the sanitary district boundaries accordingly. Do any members of the Planning Commission wish to discuss this motion before we take a vote?
Chair, as a formality, would you close the public hearing, please?
Public testimony is closed. Public hearing is closed. So I guess we'll take it to a vote. A voice vote, please.
Okay. Christopher Farr?
I go last.
Oh, thank you. Clark Powers?
Aye.
Mike Magar?
Aye.
Katie Pritchard?
Aye.
Terry Johnson?
Aye.
Jeremy Leonard is absent. Jason Crushar?
Aye.
And Christopher Farr?
Aye. All right. We can move on to agenda item 3, which is very similar to our last item. Again, taking up a Goal 11 exception for the same sanitary district boundary. And this will be, again, a quasi-judicial hearing regarding the Goal 11 exception and related matters for 2 parcels of land near Arch Cape and being included in the sanitary district. Does any commissioner have ex parte contact on this to proclaim? No. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report on this matter? Nope. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the commission to hear this matter at this time? And I don't see any objections. No one's present to object. So, if we could have the staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair Farrar. I'm Ian Sisson, Senior Planner, Community Development. This is very similar to the previous request where we're asking for your recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to allow a Goal 11 exception and an amendment to the comprehensive plan to clean up an issue that happened in 2002 when 2 parcels of residential land were annexed into the Arch Cape Sanitary District boundary without the complete process that would have been required. So the 2 properties are identified as Township 4 North, Range 10 West, Section 19 BB, tax lots 300 and 401. Address for tax lot 300 is 79878 Highway 101, Arch Cape, and the address for tax lot 401 is 79876 Highway 101. Both properties are in the coastal residential zone, geologic hazards overlay district, shoreland overlay, and also in the flood hazard overlay, although the flood hazard overlay does not affect the area where the structures are located on the property. It's down below. So these are both oceanfront properties on the west side of Highway 101. They are on top of a steep bluff, and the houses are up at the top of the bluff near the road. So the properties are each developed with a dwelling. One was constructed in 1961, the other was in 1959. Both originally were served by septic systems, on-site septic systems. In 1993, so I should say we only have a septic record for one of those properties, which is tax lot 401. We were not able to obtain a septic record for the other property because it's been on the sewer system for long enough that DEQ is no longer required to keep a record for it. So we were actually lucky to have a record for the one that we do. And that again is tax lot 401. And in 1993, the system on that property experienced issues due to geologic movement, and it was determined to be a public health hazard. Obviously, if that system is breaking because of the ground moving, then it's going to start leaking sewage. And so clearly that's a public health hazard. The fix at the time was to construct a new system on an adjacent property under separate ownership. So the owners of this particular property got an easement to construct a new system on the adjacent lot, and that had been used up until pretty recently, actually, I think until 2019, when they finally connected to the sewer district. The other property, tax lot 300, has been connected to the district for longer. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get very detailed information from DEQ or from the sewer district on the exact timeline, but the important takeaway here is that these are properties that have very limited area for a septic system and that have this geologic hazard that poses a threat to public health because it can impact these systems and cause them to leak sewage. So the same criteria from LAWDUC apply for a Type 4 procedure as for the previous matter that you heard. These, again, are in the coastal residential zone, which allows the type of development that's already present on these properties, and this proposal is not going to change anything or cause any conflict with the coastal residential zone. The comprehensive plan policies that apply are addressed here in the staff report for Goal 1 and 2 and 6 and 7. Goal 11 is the goal that we are asking you to recommend the board make an amendment to by adding a Goal 11 exception for these two properties. And then we have the Oregon administrative rules, which Julia discussed, and this case was pretty cut and dried with the fact that there's a public health hazard here for septic systems, and so it's much more practical to have these properties connected to sewer. So we found that all the criteria were met, and we are asking for your recommendation, again, to the Board of Commissioners to allow for a goal exception to Goal 11 to allow the expansion of the sanitary district to include the two properties. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you for that report, Senior Planner Sisson. Very well laid out again in the packet and in your oral testimony here. I have one quick question, just out of curiosity. On the unused septic systems, since they're now connected to the sanitary pipeline, are those abandoned in any particular way, or do they just kind of sit there and deteriorate on their own? Is there a procedure?
So what I was able to find, I think this is included in the exhibit for the septic record for tax lot 401, is that the original system that had failed was decommissioned. I don't know the technical details of what that means. I did see something that indicated the tank may have been used as a holding tank still, but the drain field is no longer connected. And so, you know, ultimately, DEQ has the standards for how those systems are decommissioned.
Okay, I see. Seems like it would be a good idea to have a record if a reservoir below ground is located somewhere just for future activities on that property, but it's not related to what we're doing this morning. Do any other planning commissioners have questions for Senior Planner Sisson? Yes,
I do.
Commissioner Johnson.
I'm just curious on what was really driving this? What was the need to revisit these after this was both of these really, it was already done? I understand it wasn't done correctly, but there's a lot of work that staff and others had to put all this together to get it done right, but why was it necessary to go back so far to make sure it's done right? Was it something that came from the state that mandated that this be corrected, or what happened?
So the short answer that I have is just that we are cleaning up the issue because it was not done correctly in 2002. So when that was observed by staff, I think it was maybe by Julia years ago, we realized that it had not been done correctly. And so, again, it's a housekeeping matter to clean that up and to correct the issue so that the process that was undertaken in 2002 is now officially complete. I would assume that would prevent any potential legal issues down the road for the property owners, but I don't know if Julia has anything to add.
I guess maybe what I would say is when we discovered it back in about 2014 for the fire district property and then a little bit later for these other two properties, what we were looking at was, should we have done the Goal 11 exception? And at the time, we didn't have enough information, so we checked with the state, and DLCD recommended that we go ahead and do the cleanup, do the housekeeping, because while we have the boundary, there's a number of different steps along the way to extending a sewer district beyond its boundary. And some of it's administrative, and it's through the clerk's office, and through the assessor's office, and through the planning office, and it should all be one larger project. And so when you only have parts of it, you have some of it missing. DLCD recommended that to have a complete package, we go ahead with the Goal 11 exceptions. So basically, they did tell us that whatever we could cobble together, they would support, frankly.
Okay, I understand. It just seems like something that should have been really easy in the beginning and has just gotten into kind of a complicated mess that we're now fixing, which is fine, but something that everybody would have supported and needed to have done, especially for the fire department to get built, it just got a little bit convoluted. So I'm glad to see we're cleaning it up. I hate to have to go through so much work to do it. Appreciate all your work that you've done on it, but it's extensive. I mean, it's impressive of what's been done here.
Does it change anything? I mean, we're not gonna make them disconnect. It's all it is just documenting it and making it legal, but it still is irrelevant, correct?
I wouldn't say that it's irrelevant. We're making it legal. That's not irrelevant. That would never be irrelevant. So that we're legalizing it. In the case that Ian is working on, at one point, one of the property owners was considering doing a zone change to the ACRCR zone from the coastal residential zone. And so if that were the case, then they would need the Goal 11 exception for that. They have since decided not to do that, or at least not to do it at this time. So anyway, we've got that cleaned up, plus we've got the health hazard issue over there as well. So basically what we're doing is making sure that everything is lined up so that if something does come up down the road, we have all of these things in place, in order, so that we don't have some sort of issue that we have to clean up later, maybe under duress.
Are there a lot of these?
I hope
Are
not.
there maybe a lot more that we don't even know about yet?
I hope not.
Okay.
Anybody on the virtual side of things here want any of the commissioners, Commissioner Magyar or Richard?
Yeah, I was scrolling through the packet and I was looking for the recommended phrase to use. I know sheet 14 was good for the last one. Is there another sheet?
Page 53.
Page 53.
Thank you.
But I'll make one final comment on getting these things fixed up and right. I agree that it's important to have it legally correct, because the property owners could be affected in some way that we can't foresee. So when we know about something like this, we should clean it up. The other thing is, seeing how much effort it takes will be impetus to not let these things slip through the cracks from here on out, to be on guard, to think ahead and make sure that all the bases are covered. And I see you doing that now very diligently. So this is a learning exercise. It's kind of like paying your dues for having missed something long ago. And it doesn't reflect on anybody here in the room. So I think it's a great thing. So with that, I will call for public testimony. At this point, the hearing is open for public testimony. And I'll ask staff if anybody wrote in on this or requested a time slot. I don't see anybody in the room, nor do I see anybody online. So it looks like we don't have public testimony, but I'll just say it again that this is the opportunity to raise your concerns or your discussion points around this matter this morning. And it's required that you raise the issue with sufficient specificity to afford a decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to an issue that precludes appeal to the board based on that issue. Speakers from the floor are required to sign in, state their name, and limit their comments to 3 minutes. And testimony and evidence must be directed toward the criteria in the plan, staff report, or land use regulation which the person believes apply to this decision. And I'll ask if there's any public agency comments to be made this morning, and I see none. So there's a few steps we can skip over here and move down to final questions for witnesses or staff, and I think we covered that. So discussion is open for the planning commissioner members at this time, if there's any further discussion.
Chair, would you again just formally close the public hearing, please?
I was going to do that right before we make a motion. I call for a motion. That's what my cheat sheet shows.
Thank you.
So I'm asking, and I don't think there is any more discussion. I think we got it out of the way a little earlier. So at this point, I will close the public testimony and ask if there's any motion a planning commission member would like to make.
Yeah, I'll move that the Clatsop County Planning Commission recommend Board of Clatsop County Commissioners amend the text of the comprehensive plan to expand the Arch Cape Sanitation District to include T4N, R10W, Section 19BB, Tax Lot 00300 and Tax Lot 00401, and update any maps within the county's comprehensive plan that depict the sanitation district's boundaries accordingly.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded, moved by Commissioner Charles Powers and seconded by Commissioner Kerry Johnson, to have the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of County Commissioners to amend the text of the comprehensive plan to expand the Arch Cape Sanitary District to include Township 4 North, Range 10 West, Section 19BB, Tax Lot 00300 and Tax Lot 00401, and update any maps within the county's comprehensive plan that depict the sanitary district boundaries accordingly. I will ask if there's any discussion around that motion. And I see or hear none, so we can move to a voice vote on that, please.
Clark Powers,
Aye.
Mike Magyar,
Aye.
Katie Pritchard,
Aye.
Terry Johnson,
Aye.
Jeremy Leonard is absent, Jason Crashauer,
Aye.
Christopher Farr,
Aye. So the vote comes down 6-0, and the motion passes. With that, we can move on to the remainder of our agenda this morning, some discussion items and reports from the director. So, the fiscal 23-24 work plan status update is next.
Okay, thank you, Chair. For the record, Gail Henriksen, Community Development Director. We put together our work plan every year in conjunction with the budget adoption, and so you have previously been provided a copy of our work plan, and then quarterly we provide updates to both the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners so they can see the status of the items that they have approved as part of our budget. Some of this is covered in my director's report, but a couple of items to highlight. We have contracts going out on October 25th for updates to goals 16, 17, and 18 of the comprehensive plan, and we are asking the board to award those contracts to CREST, the Columbia River Estuary Study Task Force. The board also awarded on September 27th a contract to Johnson Economics to complete an economic opportunities analysis. We had a preliminary meeting with staff from Johnson Economics to talk through the time frame and the process while we're waiting for the contract to be signed and finalized. And then we will be setting up a steering committee to work on the EOA, the Economic Opportunities Analysis. We don't have a date yet for that first steering committee kickoff meeting, but as we have that information, then I can forward that on to your commission as well. Another item to note is that we have started, we being community development, have started a quarterly e-newsletter that people can sign up to receive if they're interested in the happenings of community development, which would include both building codes, code compliance, and land use planning. And as needed, if we have items of interest that happen outside of the quarter, then we would send updates on that as well. I think the goal is eventually, if we have enough content, to move to a monthly format. So, but for right now, we're starting quarterly. And let's see, we have been doing some coordination with different agencies to work on grant applications. One in particular is with Department of Land Conservation and NOAA. We partnered with them to submit a grant for the Coastal Regional Resiliency Challenge. It's a $2 million grant application that would look at primarily diking districts and dikes along the Columbia River, where we may see overtopping, where we have data gaps, and to identify projects and prioritize them. We submitted the letter of intent to apply for the grant in August. We're waiting to hear back from NOAA if we'll be invited to apply, and so you'll have to stay tuned for further details on that. We also organized a presentation with the North Coast Watershed to talk about some of the work that they're doing. They spoke to the board on September 6th. And then really there's just a lot of updates in here. So those are some of the things I wanted to highlight, but if you do have any questions about anything on the work plan, I'm happy to answer that. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
On task 6, strategic plan focus area economic development. So is there what is Johnson Economics tasked with doing?
So the economic opportunities analysis, this is set up where they will look at our commercial industrial land supply for the next 20 years, evaluate employment and job creation trends, and then make recommendations to the county about whether or not we need to rezone or create more commercial or industrial lands, what the trends are, what the needs are going to be, so that we can start. It's like almost like the housing side of it with the buildable lands inventory and the housing production strategy. It's the commercial industrial equivalent of that.
Okay, so they're only tasked with A. They're not B, well, B, C, and D on task 6, which, you know, one of them is identify barriers to affordable workforce market rate housing within Clatsop County's codes, identify a variety of housing options that would be appropriate within unincorporated Clatsop County. That's not part of what they're doing.
Right, that's tracking separately, and we're actually going to talk about that next.
Okay.
After this report, and that's being handled in-house by staff. There is also, I should elaborate on that. So staff has taken on this one piece of this, but there's also another grant that we have worked with our county housing manager, community development, the cities, and the Regional Housing Task Force. We have been awarded a grant from Department of Land Conservation and Development to do a buildable lands inventory and an infrastructure readiness inventory, and that's going to be countywide, cities and county. And we're undertaking that to kind of identify, we're seeing shortages in our buildable land inventory where, for example, Warrenton, which has a lot of floodplain, wetland areas that are considered buildable land but really may not be buildable, where they may need to do urban growth boundary, either adjustments or swaps or expansions. And then also setting up the city of Astoria, which is going to be required to do some additional housing strategy, the housing needs analysis and the housing production strategy, because there are 10,000 people now, so they're mandated to do that. So we're trying to set up a regional conversation and unified front, I guess you could say, because none of us have the capacity alone to complete this work, really, and it's not going to be any one jurisdiction's actions that will solve the housing crisis or fully address our housing needs, so we have to be coordinated and working together with the same information, so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? I have one quick question going back to the quarterly newsletter, and that's going to be primarily a electronic report.
Yes.
I was just thinking it might be worth producing a few physical copies of that and placing them where people that don't tend to use the internet could read them if they wish to, like at the public libraries and the county offices, and maybe Clatsop Community College Library. It's just, I feel we need to keep in mind that not everybody is electronically oriented. So it's just a thought.
Okay, thank you.
So, I guess at that point, we can take up the Law Duck amendments discussion.
All right. And Roan, if you could share the agenda and the presentation, please. So while Roan's bringing that up, these are some draft amendments. We, as staff in the Planning Commission, have been talking for the past several months, since March this year, on and off, about different changes that could be made to the Law Duck that might help facilitate housing production. And so the board was eager to see where we are at on this. They're eager to move forward with it. So we did a presentation to the board last Wednesday on October 4th, and this is the presentation that was given to them. And it incorporates a lot of the items that we have been talking about since March of this year. So I wanted to start off, first of all, we know that about the housing crisis, the governor's goal to construct 36,000 new units over the next 10 years. We know that there are also a lot of things that affect housing construction. If you could go to 2 more down, please, Roan. 1 more. Yep. So I know everybody likes to look at planning and point the finger at planning and say you're the reason that nothing ever gets done in the world, but we're just the low-hanging fruit, honestly. There are a lot of bigger things that affect housing production and costs than just the planning process. So, you know, it could be anything, and I know that you all know this: land availability, land cost, can you get materials, how much are they costing, how long does it take to get them. State building code requirements add a lot of expense into projects. In incorporated areas, there's system development charges, SDCs. In Clatsop County, we don't have an SDC, but we collect on our building permits the Astoria school tax. So when you come in to collect a permit and pay your fee with the county, it's going to be several $1,000s more simply because of that school tax that is charged as part of that permit that we collect. It's not our money, we don't keep it, it goes to the school district, but people look at the bottom line of the cost of a permit, and, you know, that's just one part of it. You have to look at things like inflation and interest rates, and then what is your local market? You know, where are the employment bases? What are the salaries that people are bringing in? How much housing can they afford? In some cases, we see opposition to projects, NIMBYism, that add a lot of time and expense if they're appealed repeatedly, go to LUBA, some of them go to circuit court, and that can bring make a project take a year and a half to get a final approval. And in the meantime, those people may have to hire attorneys or land use planners to walk them through that process, and that ties in with our litigation. Next slide, please, Ron. So the things that community development and land use planning can do are limited. So we're trying to focus on the immediate and medium range things that are within our control in land use planning and underneath the county's control to help move the process forward and streamline it and, you know, facilitate as much as we can within our power, everything we can do to stimulate housing. So that would include things like reducing application fees, simplifying how we're doing our staff reports so that we can issue approvals more quickly, trying to make the process easier so that someone coming in off the street who doesn't do construction for a living or hasn't done multiple projects has an easier time understanding what we're asking for and why we're asking for it. And then also to just, again, try to encourage housing at all price points. So we're not focused on one particular type of housing. Next slide, please, Ron. Okay, so what we can't do, obviously, is we can't revise the state building code. That's going to be something that would have to happen at a much higher level. We can't revise Oregon state statutes. We cannot force anybody to sell or partition their land or build on it or anything like that. And even though we collect taxes for the Astoria School District, we can't waive them, we can't reduce them, we don't have any control over their fees because they're not ours. And somebody has to pay them. So until the board says that the county will step up and pay, for example, the Astoria school tax for everybody, it's going to be the responsibility of the person doing the development.
One quick question on that point. Is it just the school district that's a special district that, well, it's not really a special district, but it's another district. Are there other special districts that ask the county to pass through, essentially?
That's the one.
Okay.
But if you were in a city, you would have not only your school tax, but you'd have probably taxes possibly for sewer, system development charges for sewers, for roads, for waters, for water, for parks. There's a variety of things that system development charges.
I was just wondering with our transportation system, you know, which is countywide, but they don't have any.
No, we don't. Okay. All right, so onwards and upwards, please, Roan, or onwards and downwards, as the case may be. Okay, so we proposed a slate of 11 changes to the board on October 4th, and I'm just going to go through these briefly. The first one, which we've talked about, is to move those duplex dwellings from a conditional use up to a type 1. That would basically reduce the application fee from $1,200 to $85, and it would chop the approval time down to a few weeks, depending on if there's any other hazards like floodplain or geologic hazard, from what takes now several months. It would eliminate the public notice. It would eliminate the 12-day appeal period at the end of it, and really it's not much different than a single-family home, so there's really not a reason to elevate it to that conditional use level. Next slide, Rowan, please. Okay, another thing that we would like to do, and again, we talked about this with the Planning Commission, is that we have some things in some zones that are not uniform, and we want to create uniformity as much as possible. One of the examples that I pulled out was the Arch Cape Rural Community Residential Zone, where if you want to extend an existing road or construct a new road, you have to go for a conditional use. And in every other zone, it's just a land transportation improvement. It's an $85 type 1 permit over the counter. And in particular with this one, this is an example where we've had in Arch Cape recently, we had 3 applicants come in to extend existing roads and existing platted rights-of-way. 2 of the cases were appealed to a hearings officer. One of those cases was then appealed to the board. The board decision was appealed to LUBA. LUBA remanded the decision back. It went back to LUBA, and then finally it was settled. But that process took a year and a half for that particular applicant to get through, and probably added several $1,000s onto his project by just to be able to put in a road to access his property. So we want to look for examples like that where we can, make those types of uses uniform across the county, because there's no substantial reason why it would have to be different.
In the broader picture, there are different zones for specific reasons, so I would hope that It's not that you want to turn the county into one zone where everything's done exactly the same. There may be reasons why one area, something may work well, and another area of the county where it might create a problem. So is there a move to just make everything sort of uniform across all zones throughout the county?
Well, not everything would be uniform. For example, and we'll just continue to discuss Arch Cape, for example, they have community and water and sewer. So they're able to have much smaller lot sizes than rural residential lands, which are required to be a minimum of 2 acres for new development. So obviously there are things that are state mandated that we can't change. Setbacks on a smaller lot are likely to be less than if you've got a 2-acre parcel. So there probably wouldn't be the same setbacks. I wouldn't foresee changing an R5 zone property, which is a 5-acre minimum lot size, and saying you can now have a 10-foot or a 5-foot setback from your property line. That would just seem a little odd. I mean, there'll still be things that will always be different between zones, but there are other things that should be uniform. When you've got 40 zones in the county and 39 of them don't require a conditional use to extend a road, I think, and that's a little bit of an exaggeration, the farm and forest zones do, but, you know, all the other zones don't require that. So what is the exception that this has to be the way it has to be? Because there are, for example, if you're extending a road, so a concern may be steep slopes, and that's going to be captured by a geologic hazard. And so they're going to have to go through that process regardless. So is there a reason why on top of a process they already have to go through, you're going to add another process on top of that? I think those are the questions that we're trying to ask.
Okay, so you're still keeping the requirement that they meet the standards for geologic hazards or other kinds of hazards or conditions.
Right, or if the slope is steep, there will be a requirement at some point they have to pave, depending upon the percentage of the grade. And so those things, again, they apply across the board. I mean, there's no exception from them, but it just didn't seem to make sense to add that third additional process on top of it when nobody else would have to go through that.
Thank you.
All right, let's see here. All right, moving on to number 3, please. So again, we talked about some of the zones where we have community water and sewer. Those are our rural communities, which would include Westport, Miles Crossing, Jeffers Gardens, and then the Arch Cape area. And right now they've got minimum lot sizes and lot width requirements. It's 7,500 square feet for a single-family home and a 75-foot lot width, and we would propose lessening that, decreasing that to 5,000 square feet for the lot area, 50-foot lot width, which is actually what many of these properties were platted at about 100 or more years ago. A lot of them are 50 by 100 lots. A lot of them are already developed as 50 by 100 lots. And then also to change the duplex lot size and requirements for that as well, reduce that down from 15,000 to 10,000 square feet. So, again, with the hope that if you require less land, which is a very valuable and expensive commodity, and you can build on a slightly smaller lot because you have sewer and water, that you may be able to also reduce your price point. But next slide, please, Ron. Okay. And then looking at these development areas, and they're listed below, these are primarily within the Westport area out by Cullowhee Lake and Arch Cape. These are development zones. Fishhawk Lake is another one where you have access to community water and sewer. And so we are proposing that in addition to single-family and duplexes, that triplexes and quadruplexes also be considered as an allowed use in those types of zones. Next slide. Okay, and then as we move into more dense zones, we have two multifamily zones within the county. One's a rural community multifamily residential, the other one's a rural service area multifamily residential. And right now, both of these zones include multifamily dwellings, which would be apartments, basically. It could be townhomes or something like that. Mobile home parks and boarding houses, rooming houses, group housing. They're all conditional uses right now, which means you have that $1,200 fee, you've got the 10-day public comment period, and you've got a 12-day appeal period. And so we are proposing that those be changed from a type 2 to a type 1, which would be the reduced fee, the no public notice, the no 12-day appeal period. As part of that, we would also have to develop very clear and objective standards in order to do that, so that you can basically go down a checklist at the counter, setbacks, building height, whatever those standards are, so that you don't have to go through that subjective conditional use permit, which is more discretionary. So again, it wouldn't allow anything new in the zone, it would just be how it's processed, just to make that clear.
How much effort and time is involved in getting into making the clear and objective criteria throughout? Just for example, this one particular change you're thinking about with the multifamily residential.
Yeah, so right now what we would look at, in addition to your setbacks, which are going to be required regardless of how you're processed, and your building height, which is a fixed standard, when you do a conditional use, we're going to look at things like parking, which isn't going to vary. So parking would be a clear and objective standard. We would look at, the conditional use now would look at how much noise do you generate, which is kind of hard to measure, because you can have a rooming house that's full of very quiet people who like to read books, or you can have a rooming house full of people who like to come home after work and party till 2 in the morning. So, and there's no way to really quantify that or standardize it. We have quiet hours, which would always be in effect everywhere throughout unincorporated county. So that's already there. That's a pretty, the time frame is clear and objective. I think how you measure it is a little nebulous, but that's still there. We would look at, does it generate glare, vibration, noise? You know, probably not a lot of glare and vibration from a boarding house or a manufactured house. So we're subjecting these uses right now to a lot of criteria that don't make sense for housing. You know, does it create dust? Is there going to be truck traffic? You know, what about deliveries? Well, we wouldn't regulate delivery times at a single-family home, but yet for apartment buildings, we would have a requirement to look at delivery times and then limit them. So it's really just trying to equalize things. So to go back and answer your original question, though, Chair, is I think these standards can be developed fairly quickly. We are going to talk about clear and objective standards a little bit more when we get to the legislative update item, but we're going to be working on that for a while.
So is some time set aside in your work plan for that this coming fiscal year?
No, because when we drafted our work plan, we didn't have that information about the clear and objective standards from House Bill 3197. So that's one of those surprise bonus work plan items that we receive every year as a gift from the state. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm sure it came with funding.
Yes. All right, Rona, let's go on to the next slide, please. So then, moving out of single-family and multifamily zones, we also wanted to look at our commercial zones. And we know that in cities, it's not uncommon where you have mixed uses, where you may have ground floor retail and then, you know, residential above that. Obviously, that's not what we're probably going to end up with here in the county, but we do want to make sure that where we do have commercial districts, where there are existing single-family homes that are now considered non-conforming. You know, they were built before our zoning, but then our zoning came in and said, no more single-family homes. You're all non-conforming. If you burn down, you got so much time to rebuild, otherwise you can't do it. If you want to change your house, you have to go through a conditional use if you want to do an addition or build a deck or something like that. So what we want to do with this change in number 6 is make sure that the existing homes that were there before our zoning change don't have to go through this process anymore. What we also want to make sure is that because the county has limited commercial space, that we are not allowing new home construction. We want to maintain what's there and make it easier for the people, but we don't want to just take all of our commercial land and say, now we're going to convert it all to residential, because that's our employment base. So we also need to be protective of that and try and balance that. And that's probably something Johnson Economics is going to look at when they come in and do their economic opportunities analysis. So number 6 is looking primarily at existing single-family homes in commercial zones and making sure they can continue to exist. Then with number 7, and I think this combines a little bit with number 8 and with number 9, is in our commercial zones right now, you can do, I'm confusing the 3 of them. I think with number 7, what we're going to do is add some additional uses so that you could do multifamily dwellings, manufactured home parks, boarding houses, but those would be conditional uses. Because again, as I stated, we want to have the ability to protect our employment-based lands. But conversely, more dense housing could be a good fit. And so by having it as a conditional use where we do have the ability then to take that closer look, to look at some of the impacts from the noise, the vibration, is it going to impact surrounding commercial, which is what we really care about. I mean, it's different from when you are an apartment building and a manufacturing plant builds next to you. In this case, you may have the manufacturing plant next to you, and now you want to build, apartments. So I think having that as a conditional use where you can take a closer look at it and be a little bit more fine-grained and maybe add a few more conditions into it to make sure that whatever uses are next to each other are going to be compatible, that would justify the elevated review process. So that was proposed change number 7.
Is there, at this time, at least sort of a sense or a feel of how the commercial property inventory sits relative to the expected need over the next 20, 30 years?
No, which is why we've hired Johnson Economics.
So there's really not been much done on that?
Not since we did it in probably 83, when we did the comp plan. There really has not been an update.
But from GIS or something, you can probably get a total acreage maybe, or things like that, can't you, for the county?
I could probably get a total acreage of what is zoned, commercial or industrial, but for example, out in Miles Crossing, Jeffers Gardens, you have a lot of commercial land that contains single-family homes. In the tourist commercial area down by Sunset Lake, there are a lot of single-family homes and the mobile home park, and only really one business that I can think of down there, maybe 2. But so the total acreage wouldn't be enough to really give you a meaningful answer. You'd have to then go lot by lot, parcel by parcel, and see what's actually on the property. So the commercial land, even though there may be 100 acres, not 100 acres of it is used for commercial purposes.
So it sounds like that Johnson study will be really important.
Yes, it is very important. Okay, number 8. Thank you, Ron. All right, then one change that we would like to propose is to allow on-site employee housing in commercial industrial zones. And I think this could be important. I don't know if anybody will take advantage of it. I know Warrenton did something similar, and after they changed their codes, nobody has taken advantage of it. So, but we will throw it out there and see how it works. Number 9, please, Ron. All right, so this is where I always get confused in my head. So right now, in a commercial zone, you have a commercial use and you can have residential as part of that. But to do that residential component, you have to go to a public hearing. You would have to pay a $1,500 fee, and then you have your appeal periods and public notice and everything else. So what we would like to propose is that your commercial use still stays as it is, as your conditional use, but if you want to tack on a residential component to that, you could do that as a type 1. So the $85 fee, meet your setbacks, stay within your building height, and then it would almost be like a bonus. Like, if you buy this commercial use, you can have this residential use for $85, and it's not a limited time offer, and you don't have to call now because there are no operators standing by. But I think that might be a good way to incentivize people to take advantage of that.
Bill?
Yeah.
Is there a percentage for commercial to residential? I know that we've looked at doing a couple things here in Astoria that are commercial that would allow, like what this is, some residential in it, but there's a percentage, like 40%, 30%, 20% of the building can be used as residential, but 60, 70, 80, whatever, has to be commercial. Is there anything in there? Because I know you can do it if you apply for conditional use, correct? But this is looking to change.
Yeah, so we
couldn't just put in a 8x10 office and then build a great big house. I was wondering if there is.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I can tell you that I had not considered that at that point. So that's something I need to think about, so I appreciate that. And do we have any recommendations, what you would like to see? So if it's a commercial zone, should it be 50% commercial?
We've already talked about it in the previous couple of slides, allowing residential in commercial, so this might be irrelevant. If you make residential as a type 1 in a commercial zone, this may be a moot point.
Well,
if it's already allowed, then, you know, what would it matter? But if it's not allowed as a type 1 use, build a house in a commercial zone, what portion of the building would have to be commercial as opposed to having an apartment in the back for a housing for an employee or something, or an owner or whatever?
Okay. Yeah, and I don't have the answer. I don't think we specify a percentage right now, but I may be incorrect on that.
Astoria has something, and I can't remember what it was, because we were looking at a commercial building up here to put some residential apartments in it with the storefront, and I don't know exactly what it was, so I'd be speaking out of hand, but there was some sort of a percentage they would allow in the commercial zone right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do some looking into that.
Related to that, all the while you were discussing these combination uses, I was picturing a standalone residence and then a standalone commercial building or industrial building. But there's nothing in what you said in the past 4 or 5 items here that would preclude having it combined into one contiguous building. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. We did not propose any requirements that it either be attached or detached.
Yeah, okay.
But, okay. So I'll make a note to do some checking on that percentage and see what we can do with that. Number 10, please, Roan. Let's see. Okay, so part of this we have already implemented. We have done a pretty thorough reworking of our application for partitions and revised the staff report so that it is more of a checklist. And we just did our first report with it a few weeks ago, and it took about 1/3 of the time, according to the planner who processed it. So we will need to go back at some point and then ask the board if that proves consistently true over the next few partitions. We would want to go back to the board and ask them to reduce that fee to be more reflective of the amount of work that's actually in there. Because, though, it is a land use decision, we don't have a way to opt out of the 10-day public notice and the 12-day appeal period, so that would still continue to factor into your time frame. But I think what we will get to is where, once your 10-day public notice comment period is ended, we can issue the report and go directly into the 12-day appeal period. And so shorten that time frame from couple of months to like 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks. All right. Next, please. All right, so this is a project that Clatsop County has been selected to participate in by DLCD, and it is technical assistance. The state's going to come through and look at our codes and make recommendations on ways to modernize them and revise them to promote the use of mass timber. And I don't know what changes are going to come out of that. We're still waiting, I think, on the memorandum of understanding, and once that is signed and we move forward with that, I would suspect that it'll probably be about 4 to 6 months before we bring revisions back to the Planning Commission for review. So, but again, it's a way to look at economic development, it's a way to look at housing and just trying to pursue all avenues that we can. All right, so we talked about the immediate and intermediate things that we can look at. There are a few things that we would like to also look at that are going to take a little bit more time, but that hopefully staff can complete by the end of the fiscal year on June 30th, 2024. One of those would be to do a review of Oregon revised statutes to see which farm and forest uses, particularly dwelling types, can be reviewed as a type 1 instead of a conditional use. And you'll remember that Ian just brought forward some amendments a couple of months ago that did that for replacement dwellings in the EFU. And then also to keep looking and doing surveys of other jurisdictions' geohazard mitigation regulations. You'll remember that staff had brought forward some changes. There was a lot of discussion about the mapping accuracy and the LIDAR that was used. And so the board, I know, has requested that staff look at other jurisdictions to see how they're handling their geologic hazard mitigation requirements. So we have that on our list of things to do as well. And then just a couple of other items to think about. We've done these proposals, we've sent them off to the state for an initial review and notification that we're going to be working through these changes. I have not heard any comments back from the state, and this is a pretty aggressive agenda for a rural community. And I can't guarantee that the state's going to sign off on everything. We're going to put it to the state and see what they'll allow us to do. Let me think. Let's see. If we do, the other thing that we talked about with the board is that as we reduce fees, that does have an impact on the community development department and our land use planning division, because $80,000 per year of our funding is we anticipate being generated from fees. So as we reduce them, there will be some impact. I expect that it's going to be minor. Some of the changes where we're proposing fee changes, nobody has ever made that application in over 5.5 years. So it's not as if we had that revenue and now we suddenly won't see it. I think where we will see the most significant hit is when we reduce the partition fees. And based on what we did last year, I anticipate that to be around $9,500. So it's not super significant, but as we move into the future and we combine that with Habitat Conservation Plan impacts or impacts if FEMA biological opinion gets implemented, there are just things to think about as we move forward.
Reducing those fees and reducing them to a type 1 will also reduce the workload of staff, correct?
Yeah, and believe me, we've got enough work that I can keep my planning staff and myself busy for probably 10 to 15 years. We've got...
It'll help all the way around.
I think so, and I really think the financial hit will be pretty negligible in the overall scheme of things. The majority of our funding comes from video lotteries, so... Yeah, which has been pretty flush with cash since pandemic, let me tell you. All right. So anyway, so next steps, and I apologize, I know this took a long time, but we have already talked to the board October 4th. We're bringing you into this conversation today. What we would like to do is we are planning on November 14th to do the public hearing. The paperwork, the notice has already been submitted to Department of Land Conservation and Development. And then we would anticipate 2 public hearings before the board, one in December of this year and one in January. And depending upon that, how that all goes, the board also talked about, if needed, we may need to slow down the process and do a little bit more public outreach. But right now, they've just directed us to move forward with the schedule that's in your agenda. So again, I apologize for the length of that, but I am here to answer any questions, and I thought it was important enough of a topic to take some time delving into the details. So.
Any questions from commissioners? How about the 2 commissioners that are virtually attending?
Great
Or
report,
attending.
Gail. Great report.
No questions.
you.
Thank you. That was a great report.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're headed in this is a good start. I think that these are issues that I want to be here and be a part of and talk about these types of things. So making the modifications to adapt to the times that we live in and time well spent.
Okay. So we'll bring that back on the 14th next month. Are you ready to move on, Chair?
Oh, yep.
Okay.
I was just looking at this photograph, and I was
Yeah, so
kind of curious where you find these.
these are all LC Vine Maple area. We pulled them when we were working on the community plans, so.
Well, they're cool. All right, well, let's hear about the legislative updates then.
Okay, so along with myself, we have David Cook and Jason Pollock, our planners, are here as well to answer questions, and Ian's probably somewhere on the line, maybe not, but he also did some work on this as well. So I will, and I can give my voice a break. I'm going to have David and Jason come up and just talk about the items that you worked on, and then I can go over the rest of those. Okay.
Gail, would you mind emailing me this PowerPoint? I'll probably in my email somewhere with the whole packet, but
Yeah.
it'd be helpful to have it by itself.
Yeah, I'll send it out to everyone.
As well as the work plan while you're at it.
Okay. Okay, well, David and Jason are getting set up here. Every year, after the legislature completes its work, Department of Land Conservation and Development sends out a summary that pulls together all the land use bills that were adopted by the legislature and advises local jurisdictions about code changes that may be required. So we started this last year where we went back through to 2018 and brought you a slate of changes that covered 2018 through 2022, and now we're just going to do this on an annual basis. So I'll let David and Jason start first by going over the changes that they worked on, and then I'll go through the rest of them in the report.
Everybody ready? Chair, Commissioners, the one I worked on was House Bill 2898, use of a recreational vehicle following a natural disaster. This is a very minor one, from allowing it for 24 months to 5 years. And this was a House bill that was a clarification of a previous House bill from 2001 related to the 2020 wildfires. Excuse me, I think I said 2001, 2021 was when the original bill was from. Minor change, and it's highlighted the dates of the extension on D in the packet.
So is that essentially just a one-line change in our ordinances?
Yeah, one-line change, and then D was added for clarification.
Okay, thanks.
And good morning, Commissioners. So the bill I worked on was Senate Bill 644, accessory dwelling units on lands zoned for rural residential use. You may recall that not too many months ago, we brought forth code amendments to allow accessory dwelling units in many of our rural residentially zoned lands on parcels that are greater than 2 acres in size. I think that those amendments got a fair bit of buy-in from this commission and from the Board of Commissioners. So those regulations were adopted in January, I believe, of this year. But part of those regulations required the adoption of statewide wildfire risk maps prepared by the Oregon Department of Forestry, and those maps have still not been created. So we have been unable to permit accessory dwelling units under the code that we adopted in January because of the lack of these wildfire risk maps. So Senate Bill 644 comes in and allows counties to essentially remove the requirement to have these adopted wildfire risk maps in order to permit an accessory dwelling unit. So the code language change you will find on page 163 of your packet. Those are where the strikeouts are, and you can see it basically takes out most mention of every kind of statewide wildfire risk map. Important to note that there are still regular fire safety standards that accessory dwelling units would need to qualify for, which are described on subsection 17 of that code. Still has adequate access for firefighting equipment, safe evacuation, and staged evacuation areas. Thank you.
All right. So then you have to change the numbers on those too, right?
Yes, correct, Chair.
So 16, 17, 19, 20, 21 is all going to be revised numbers.
Renumbered, yeah.
Usually you show that on those, but that's good. Thank you.
Okay. And then there are a few other remaining bills. Most of this is pretty straightforward. House Bill 2192 reworked the language on replacement dwellings on forest lands, and I think the biggest change is that right now the code says the replacement dwelling has to have or has had certain things: kitchen facilities, bathroom facilities, heating systems, electricity. And that's going to change basically to say the structure has to have that. So it will no longer allow you to go back in time and, you know, resurrect something that no longer exists. And that's probably the biggest change from House Bill 2190.
Can I interrupt?
Oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Sorry, I didn't see you up there.
I'll explain this one. It's actually the opposite. So we currently in the F80 zone and in the AF zone for land that's devoted to forestry use, if you wanted to alter, restore, or replace a lawfully established dwelling, the way the code's currently written and the way the Oregon revised statutes are currently written, the dwelling to be altered, restored, or replaced must still be in existence and must still have all of those features that are listed in the summary there. So the walls and roof structures, the plumbing, the electrical, the heating system, etc. So on agricultural land, however, you are allowed to alter, restore, or replace a dwelling that has or formerly had those items. And so what this bill does is aligns the standards for forest zones and forest land with what we have for agricultural land. And so the dwelling can, to be altered, restored, or replaced, can now have or formerly have had those items. And there are some requirements, some time requirements for that. So the dwelling has to have had those features within the past 4 years or 3 years, I apologize. And the replacement or restoration or alteration has to happen within 4 years of issuance of the permit. So the LAWDUC amendments are shown there. And again, this actually relaxes the rules a little bit because it allows dwellings that formerly had those features to be altered, restored, or replaced.
Well, thank you for that explanation.
Okay. Ian, House Bill 3179 is also yours.
Thank you. So 31, let me get that one in front of me here. We're not proposing any code amendments at this time. That's the main takeaway on this bill. But I can give you a quick summary of it. So this deals with renewable energy facilities, specifically the jurisdiction over solar photovoltaic, and it makes some changes to what can be permitted for solar systems on high-value farmland, and it changes the minimum or changes the maximum acreage requirements. And it was something that addresses items that we don't currently address in detail in our code. So it's something that warrants being tracked as an entirely separate project. So this one is something that we'll bring back to you at a later date. Again, that's House Bill 3179, dealing with solar photovoltaic power generation facilities on farmland.
I had one question on that in the packet, it's one of the last sentences under that House Bill 3179 that talks about renewable energy facilities granting siting permits for such facilities to be built on the right-of-way of state highways or county roads. And I wasn't sure how to interpret that. Is this there would be solar panels put along a right-of-way or to a road? It doesn't seem like that would be appropriate, maybe.
Thanks for the question, Chair
Farrar.
I don't have an answer for you on that. I can look into that and get back to you, though.
Yeah, I was just curious about that.
Yeah, and again, this item will come back to you at a later date as a standalone.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. I was just kind of curious about it.
All right. Did you have anything else, Ian, that you wanted to add?
No, just those two things. If there were any questions on the first one on 2192, I'm happy to answer those.
All right, seeing none, I'm going to go on and talk about House Bill 3197. This is the one that requires counties to now implement clear and objective standards for housing development. And the areas where this will apply in Clatsop County are the unincorporated communities. So again, Arch Cape, Miles Crossing, Jeffers Gardens, Napa Swenson, and Westport. And then also our rural residential zones, which are listed on page 157, which would be the coastal beach residential, coastal residential, the RA 12510, and our single family residential 1. And so the counties will have until July 1st, 2025 before these have to be implemented. So in the meantime, we will be going through our zones and bringing this forward as a separate set of amendments to the Planning Commission and the board to review our clear and objective standards. And then the other one that I want to talk about is Senate Bill 1013, which would allow counties to allow an RV on a property to be used as a residence. There are some caveats that come along with that. First of all, it's not required that counties do this. So it is optional. If the counties want to do it, there are certain criteria in the bill that have to be met, that there has to already be an existing single-family home on the property. That home has to be owner-occupied. The RV cannot be rented out as a short-term or vacation rental. The RV would either have to be owned or leased by the person who's living in it, and the property owner would have to provide essential utilities to the RV. And then if a jurisdiction wants to move forward with this, the jurisdiction itself could set additional requirements, including the requirement to have a written lease between the property owner and the RV renter, that there could be limitations on how high the payments could be that are being charged to the tenant. There could be local inspection and siting standards. And so because there's a lot of unknowns and there's a lot of policy decisions, including whether or not the board would even want to move forward with this type of situation, that we will be taking this as a work session item to the board on October 25th and discussing the issue with them at that time. So until we know which way the board wants to move forward on this, or if they want to move forward at all, this will track separately as well, as a separate set of amendments. And I think that concludes the legislative updates. So what we'll do for the changes that were included in your packet today, we will bring those forward again, either in November or December, and then move them forward to the board for adoption.
Okay. Well, thank you all, three of you, for that report. A lot of stuff in there to have to work through. So at this point, we can move on to the project status report.
Yep, and I'm really here just to answer any questions you might have on that. Not a lot to report on that one.
Any questions?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Any questions from our two members attending virtually on
No
the
questions.
status report?
No questions. Thank you for the comprehensive report.
Okay, well, I think we can move to your director's report then.
Okay, so a lot of what's in my report we have already covered with our comprehensive plan update. We are working on some things with the Army Corps of Engineers and reviewing 5 different projects right now. One of them is the 20-year dredge material management plan, and we have been invited as the county to become a cooperating agency on that review, which means that we get a seat at the table as the plan is being drafted, not necessarily waiting for the public comment period to come about. So we are working on that review along with several others. Our comments on the dredge material management plan are due in a couple of weeks, October 21st. So we will keep you updated on that as public comment periods come forward. The other projects are some dredging and disposal, dredging at Tongue Point and disposal. We've got a 10-year operations and maintenance plan that we're reviewing for the Army Corps. There is a project associated with dredging at Cape Disappointment, the Coast Guard station, and there is one other one that escapes me at this point, but we've got 5 projects we're looking at. Some dredging in the Lower Columbia, which I think has already occurred. So then the Regional Housing Task Force, we met last week as well. We had a very good discussion about something that I can't remember what it was. We met with, Colpac gave a presentation to us and talked about the items that they are working on in terms of assistance to local governments for housing, for economic development. We talked about our grant that we received from Department of Land Conservation and Development and moving forward with that. So that covered that. The Farm and Forest Technical Working Committee that Ian is on, they met August 31st, we met September 20th, and then there was a meeting yesterday. And what the group is doing is working through a matrix of items that have been identified as being either unclear or needing to have additional language or be added or something, or have processes established to make the farm and forest codes clearer and to continue to protect those farm and forest resource lands. Staff is also participating in a beach and dunes inventory mapping advisory committee that met at the end of September. This is a project that's being led by Dogami to update the maps all along the coastline, which have not been updated in several decades. So they are anticipating that they may be able to complete ours for Clatsop County as early as March of next year, and that would tie into our update of Goal 18 as well. So all these projects are coming together right now. And then we have already talked about the Mass Timber Code Up project. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Any members of the commission have questions for our Community Development Director?
I guess I'm not really too sure what the Mass Timber Code Up project entails. What does that mean for Clatsop County?
Well, it's unknown yet because we haven't started the work. I think that what they're looking for are any barriers in our codes, either our zoning codes or local building codes, where we may have language that might prohibit the use of mass timber in construction or require additional requirements. I think our code is pretty clean, but I'm curious to see what DLCD is going to find and recommend.
Seems like most of that would be on the building code side, which would be coming from the state, not the county.
Yeah, we do have in our county code, it's Title 15, which addresses local building code criteria. And I don't think we have anything in there either. But, so it may be an easy project for DLCD, but.
And it's looking at more of the, just the ability to use that type of construction rather than getting some manufacturer who does that, uses those types of materials here.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do with the use and type of construction.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what would be nice is if we could tie that in with an economic development side of it that would encourage, if we want to encourage the use of mass timber, then we should also encourage the local production of mass timber to support the housing market and support our economic base in light of changes that may be coming in the future and the need to have economic development here. So, I mean, I can see a nexus between the two of them, but I just don't know what's going to come out of the audit. So.
Any other questions? Seeing none, hearing none, we could move on to anybody have a good of the order they'd like to expound upon.
I have one thing for the good of the order that I've been tracking with new proposed system development charges that the city of Astoria is looking at implementing. So with, they're proposing massive increases, or actually they do not have a systems development fee schedule established within the city. And they are looking at massive increases in fees for systems developments, which could impact pressure on county lands because it makes it much more expensive and difficult to build within the city of Astoria. And my concern is, and my fear is that they are not taking into account a lot of other factors that the city of Astoria has when it comes to difficulty of developing their existing lands. And one of those factors is their high tax rate. The city of Astoria has a much higher tax rate than many of the other cities in the state of Oregon, and also the county, also the city of Warrenton, and other jurisdictions that they compete with, if you will, for housing. So if they implement expensive fees in order to build within the city limits, that will not only drive up costs within the city, but it will put pressure on lands outside of the city. So that's just an issue of county concern that I've been tracking and following and trying to advise them not to push forward with high fees anyways. Something to be aware of. They are having ongoing hearings on that.
Well, I understand they actually approved some version of system development charges at their last meeting. And I think part of the issue there for Astoria, even though it's not in our purview to deal with it, is the condition of their infrastructure. And it's, you know, their water system's got problems. Their certainly sewer and storm drains have problems. Their streets and sidewalks and a whole lot of other things have problems, and they have to come up with some way of paying for it. And
Right.
It seems like if new development puts more strain on that infrastructure, then they figure it's fair to have, that development pay the extra cost of improvements to infrastructure. I think that's all they're trying to do.
That's what they're trying to do. They're facing, large bills for, particularly sewer and water. But systems development charges are something that the legislature allows, and they are directed to pay for capital improvements, not just to go back and fix your old failing infrastructure. It's meant for systems development for future growth. And it looks to me like the city is trying to pay for, lack of maintenance, if you will, of their existing, facilities. So,
Well, thank you. All I will say is, I appreciate the good of the order, because if it puts pressure on the county for buildable land or something, that's what we need to hear, not to debate on if the city is justified or not justified. But it's good to know that
That's a good,
as we do the building inventories and all that, that this may have an influence. Thank you.
I think that was an important point to make, and I thank, Vice Chair Powers for stepping in there and keeping us on track. So, anybody else have a good of the order? Maybe something cheerful, like, it's a rainy day.
It's not raining right now.
All right, with that, we'll, end the meeting at approximately 11:40 Pacific Daylight Time.